All right, good evening, everyone. I just want to take this opportunity to welcome you to today's, very important session. We're very fortunate to have been joined by some key community partners who we've had the privilege of working with over the years. On Monday, January 3rd, the state's New Jersey Civil Service Commission issued a notice for an examination for an entry-level law enforcement exam. This exam, unlike exams in previous years, does feature, a number of changes which are important for all of you who are interested in applying for this public notice to be aware of. And that's the reason why we wanted to have today's session. We do plan some additional sessions once the exam is actually scheduled and available, which will hopefully help to prepare some of you who have registered for this examination. And part of today's partnership was with the Essex County Hispanic Law Enforcement Society, an organization that I've worked with very closely over the years since I've been elected. We've done everything from community cleanups to food distribution events. We've sponsored joint scholarship programs, and we're very excited to have partnered with the Essex County Hispanic Law Enforcement Society, the largest Hispanic law enforcement organization in the state of New Jersey. And at this time, I'm going to ask their president, my good friend George Torres, just to say a brief hello before we actually start the session.
Thank you, Councilman. I'd like to thank everybody for participating in this. It's very important that you realize how serious this job is before you apply for anything, and the things you have to get ready mentally and physically to prepare to get ready to do. So I wish everybody good luck. Please pay attention, and no question is a silly question. All right, you have a question, please ask. I have two very knowledgeable people in front of next to me, and also myself. Thank you.
Thank you, George. And okay, thank you, George. And again, we appreciate you partnering with us in today's session. And speaking of questions, you'll all have an opportunity as Captain Esposito finishes up his presentation to ask some questions. I would ask you to utilize the chat as the avenue to ask some of the questions that you may have. We're going to take notice of those questions, and Captain Esposito will do the best that he can to make sure that he responds to those questions. And speaking of Captain Esposito, we're very fortunate to have him partner with us to run through today's prep session. Captain Esposito is someone that I've known for a number of years. We actually work together in Essex County. He's a captain in the Sheriff's Department who oversees a number of very important specialized units from the Office of Emergency Management to a number of critical functions that the Sheriff's Department supports residents of Essex County with on a daily basis. For the purposes of today's session, Captain Esposito is here representing ESPOS Test Prep, which is one of the state's most recognized test prep programs. Captain Esposito and his team have successfully trained individuals who've gone on to become public safety directors in towns, who've achieved all kinds of different ranks within police departments across the state of New Jersey. And we're very fortunate to have him here with us to share a little bit about his knowledge, but most importantly, to talk a little bit about the announcement that we're focused on today, which is the entry-level law enforcement test that was announced by the Civil Service Commission in early January. And as I mentioned earlier, this announcement is very different from other announcements that the state has issued in previous years. And that's why it's important for you to be equipped with the information that Captain Esposito is going to share to make sure that you register for this exam properly, and at the same time, set yourself up to take the exam and do very, very well on it. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Captain Ed Esposito.
Thank you very much. Yeah, turn your audio down. So I just want to make sure, I think a couple people put in the chat that they couldn't hear the audio. Is it better now? Can you hear us? If somebody could type in the chat. Thank you. Okay, so the main purpose of today, and number one, I want to thank the organization and the councilman for giving me the opportunity to share this information. But the number one goal of today is to make sure that everybody is aware of the actual application process and some of the fine details in regard to the application process. The application process itself is pretty straightforward, where you would go onto the civil service website and complete an application. However, as the councilman had mentioned, there are some specific changes to this announcement where you have to fill out an application for each individual department and or job title that you're interested in, which is different if you've taken the exam in the past. So the most notable change is, in the past, you would fill out one application, check off the different job titles that you were interested in. You would pay a little bit more of a fee. And when the results came out, you were in what they would refer to as a pool. So you would be eligible for all of the jobs, and they would draw from that list from the pool. So whether it was for one particular municipality, if the municipality was open to any residents of the county, or if the municipality was open to residents of the state. Now, the residency rules still apply. I want to make that absolutely clear. The residency rules for each jurisdiction apply, but you have to complete an application for each individual town and job you're interested in. So for example, at the county level, if you're interested in becoming a sheriff's officer in Essex County and are also interested in becoming an Essex County corrections officer, you would fill out two separate applications, pay two separate processing fees. You still only take one exam, but you do have to fill out two applications. If you only fill out the sheriff's office one, you will not be on the list for corrections. If you only fill out the corrections one, you will not be on the list for the sheriff's office. Same thing with municipal police departments throughout the state. If you are a resident of Nork and you fill out the application for the Nork Police Department, and you do not fill out an additional application for other municipal police departments where based on your residency you'd be eligible for, or you did not fill out the application for the sheriff's office, you are not going to be on their list. So the application process is really important with this change this year, that you apply for every town that you would be eligible for employment in, as long as you're interested in employment in that jurisdiction. So some towns use a residents only list first, where you have to live in that individual town. Once they go through that list of candidates, they'll open it up to the second priority, which would be, say, for county residents or tri-county residents, and then to a state list. And I will show you an example of this. If you take a look at the screen, let me just share my screen here. All right, so you should see my screen. I am simply on a Google search, and I typed in NJLEE, which is the abbreviation for the exam. When you click on that, it brings you to the state's page. So there is a lot of information on the civil service website. It's spread out over a couple different places. So you have a lot of frequently asked questions that are on this particular page. This is also where you're going to get the actual examination application information. So in this, if you click on question number 1, it'll bring you to the bottom of all these 29 frequently asked questions. A lot of information here. So I encourage everybody to go through this page. We also have a web page dedicated on our website at ESPOStestprep.com that has a more consolidated version of this that may be a little bit easier to navigate or as a starting point. But when you go down on this page, there's an actual job announcement section on their webpage that they created. I have it on the screen right now. You're going to need to scroll down to where it says view open competitive announcements. This will bring you into a separate page. In this, you will see all of the applications or jurisdictions where you can apply for the upcoming exam. So it's an alphabetical order, starts off with Aberdeen. and the list goes on. In this list, you also have other titles that are not police, not sheriffs, not corrections, have nothing to do with law enforcement, that are available through civil service that are also on this page. So what I was talking about before with the residency, I'm going to specifically go up to Nork. It's in alphabetical order. Okay, so if you see Nork that I have right here towards the top of the screen, see this number 1 that's in parentheses? This is their first priority, and it says Nork City. So if you have residency in the city of Nork, as of the closing date of the application, which is February 28th, 2022, you will be in the first group of eligible candidates based on your score. You will be ranked when they certify, which is the term they use to draw off that list. Once they exhaust the city list, their second preference is indicated by this number 2. They go to Essex County residents. Once they exhaust that list, and that's if that happens, it's not a guarantee, they go to number 3, which is the one that says New Jersey. It's open to the entire state. Now I'm going to scroll down and compare that just because it's on the same page and close. If you look at Sheriff's Officer for Ocean County, their first priority is to Ocean County residents. Their second priority is to the bordering counties, Atlantic, Burlington, and Monmouth. And then their third is to open up to the statewide list. So as you complete each application, this is the first thing you should be looking at, because there's well over 200 of these applications. You don't want to just sign up for every single one arbitrarily, because you may never get a call from them and you could just be spending money on something that you can't get a return on. So for each application, $35, the first thing you should be doing is checking out the residency. So if you look, here's another Essex County town, Nutley, for example. Number 1 priority to them, Nutley Township residents. Number 2, county residents. So this means once they get through the list of all of the Nutley residents, they'll open it up to the county residents. So if you did not live in Nutley, but you lived in Essex County, you could apply for this, and your same test score that will go toward any of the other applications you take will also count towards this once they are complete with the Nutley residents. Another example I want to show you, a little bit higher here. You have some towns that start off looking for county or tri-county residents. Let's find one here real quick in Essex County. All right, seems to be a little bit out of order, so can't really find the example I'm looking for at the moment. Give me a second. Here. Yeah, I'm not able to locate it, but there are some, you have to go through each one of these, and this is my point. Some of them, their list starts off open to county residents as the number 1 priority. So if you're a resident of Essex County, you should scroll through this. Any of the towns, if you are not dedicated or not limiting yourself to only wanting to become a police officer in a specific town, but would want to serve in any of the towns that you're eligible for, you want to spend some time and go through this page, and we could put the link to this in the chat. Go through this page and see what you're eligible for. I would say if you fit the number 1 or number 2 eligibility and you're interested in that particular jurisdiction, that you should fill out an application for that so that you have a greater chance of being hired. If you take a look up on the screen, I found one. This is a Hudson County town, but it's a good example. Take a look at Kearney Police. It's on here. Their first priority is to one, town of Kearney residents. Their second priority is to Hudson and Essex County residents. So once they go through their municipal residents, anybody who lives in Essex or Hudson County will get pulled off the same list. So if you live in Essex County and you would potentially consider employment in Kearney, this could be an option for you, because after they run through the list of their municipal residents, you'll be then eligible for employment in this particular town. When you find a town that you are set on or interested in, the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to, and at the top of this page here, you could sort these too. It gives you an option to sort them by alphabetical, title, symbol, and all that. All of these applications are due by February 28th. So that's something important for you to take notice of. But each individual application, you get into it by clicking on this little magnifying glass on the left-hand side here. So when you get into this page, this is for the specific town. Here I highlighted it, for example, Bloomfield. And then you would go through and you would submit your application. You're going to need to create a profile the very first time if you don't have one with civil service. Then it becomes relatively easy to fill out each application because your information is saved in there. So let me just go back one page. I'm going to put this link in the chat. Okay, so that's the link to the application page. That is, again, a main overview of the application. The change this year, you got to figure out when you apply, what towns, what jurisdictions you want to apply for, and you have to do an application for each individual agency. Another major change for this year is they're giving the test tentatively in the spring. Normally, the last couple cycles, they announced the test. July was when the applications came out. They were due back in August 31st, and they gave the exam in the fall, headed into the early winter. So they administered the exam on Saturdays, typically late October, some Saturdays in November, and early December. If, and this is not a guarantee, but if they hold to the same testing timetable, you could expect to sign up for this exam before the deadline of February 28th and potentially see an exam sometime in May and June on a Saturday. Again, that's if they follow the same timetable and testing day of the week, which was Saturday. Typically, you see them administer large civil service exams like this in New Jersey on a Saturday because they use county colleges and a lot of large facilities where they have ample room to fit all the candidates. And the civil service announcement specifically says tentatively in May. So obviously with COVID or any other issues they might have scheduling the exam or administering the exam, there's no guarantee. What you will find out if you sign up for the exam is if you sign up for the exam, when it gets closer, they will actually send you an announcement, and they usually use a link through either Sign Up Genius or a company similar to that, where you pick your preferred exam location, date, and time. So the exams are usually on Saturdays. They have a morning report time and an afternoon report time. Once you select that, they do not allow you to change it normally unless you have some extenuating circumstances. It's very rare that anybody is able to change it. So if you are an applicant, once you sign up, at some point in the future, expect to get some type of email from them. I would periodically check your spam email because they are sending out emails in large groups and it could go there. We've heard stories of candidates' exam application confirmation emails going to spam. So once you start this process, periodically check your spam or junk mail folder. Don't just assume it's going to go to your inbox. And I would, again, look for something from Sign Up Genius or Civil Service using some type of application registration where you would select the exam site and date. But again, that is not set in stone. They have not announced that, just saying that it's tentatively in the spring. So some other things that you need to be mindful of right now. Some municipalities allow you to get hired with residency established as of the date of hire. Other jurisdictions require it as of the date that is considered the closing date for the examination. So when they talk about the closing date, they're referring to, and I still have it on the screen, they're referring to this February 28th of 2022 date. This is important because if you are living, say, right now in the city of Irvington and they hire residents as their preferred number one, if you are living in Irvington but haven't had time to go to motor vehicle to change your license, or you haven't had your appointment yet, this is something you need to take into consideration between now and the closing date of the exam, because by the time you take the exam and the results come out, which could be as far off as 8, 9 months, maybe even a year, it's going to be too late to go back in time to establish your residency then. So if you're set on establishing residency in a specific jurisdiction because you want to work in, say, Irvington, Nork, or any other town that requires residency within a specific town, you should establish it to be safe and guarantee yourself you've established residency by the closing date, February 28th of 2022. This is a very important step. Sometimes candidates don't take this that serious. This is probably the most important thing after filling out the application you should be doing between now and February 28th is establishing your residency, making sure your license, your utility bills, cell phone, whatever it is that you have is set to this new location if you are establishing residency. Another thing that comes up periodically, sometimes people move. If you move from one location to another within the same jurisdiction you establish residency, let's say the city of Nork, you move from one location in Nork to another location, yes, you need to change your address as far as your license and everything like that. You will not lose your residency with the fact that you've already established residency in the city of Nork for the purposes of the exam. Where it becomes a problem is if somebody wants to become a Nork police officer and establish Nork residency, and they've done that, before they get certified or called by that town, they move. And they move outside the city of Nork. You have a little bit of an issue here because now you've just put yourself in a situation where you're no longer considered to have established residency for the purpose of the exam. If you change your address and you file that information with civil service, which you're required to do, and you've moved to now a resident or established residency in a location where you would not be eligible for that exam, you almost put yourself in a no man's land. So let's just say you move from Nork to Belleville and you had residency in Nork. Nork is going to hire their residents first. That's their preference. And now you've moved to Belleville. You let civil service know this. You change your license. Belleville also hires residents as their preference first before they go to the county list. You are now in a situation where you're neither on the Belleville residency preference list and you are no longer on the Nork list. On the next exam, you'll be able to use your established residency in Belleville to take advantage of their residency preference, but you've just removed yourself from the Nork list and you cannot be on the Belleville list. So if you go back to the beginning where I first pointed out those frequently asked questions on the civil service website, and I'm going to put this in the chat as well. Okay, so this is the page with the frequently asked questions. On this page, it specifically talks about address changes and establishing residency. So everything that I've just explained to you is listed specifically on this page, and then some with respect to establishing residency. So again, if you're in that situation where you live in one town now and you expect to move in the near future, I would take a look at this residency requirement and their frequently asked question concerning residency and changing your address prior to making any changes or any decisions if you really have your heart set on working in one particular town and taking advantage of their residency preference. So you can essentially put yourself, like I said, in a no man's land where your test score is good. You don't have residency in the town that you originally established residency in, and now you're not on the town that you moved into because the closing date is already passed for the exam as well. So it is a little unique in that regard. I think at this point, if anybody has any questions, probably a good time to go through any specific questions, something we didn't cover, or more detail of something we did cover. Okay, all right, the bottom of chat. Says, will the exam be based on first come, first served basis by submission? So just as a general answer to this, the general answer is no. They accept applications from as many people that apply. In the past, they've had anywhere from 20,000, 30,000 people statewide who complete the applications for various jurisdictions throughout the state. So first come, first serve is not going to change anything there. The other thing that is important to note, you're going to be ranked on the eligible list when you get certified based on your test score, and veterans preference is also a factor. The veterans are ranked by their test score, 99 all the way down to a 70, and then the non-veterans are ranked 99 all the way down to 70. So if you have veterans preference, there's a specific process to ensure that you get the veterans preference that you're entitled to there. It is definitely something that sets you further in front of other candidates. So if you are a veteran and you do have veterans preference, there's a specific list of conflicts and different things that they require. That has to be established, and you should take care of that now also prior to the actual application process or prior to the exam so that you get the credit that you deserve for the services you have performed. Got another question here at the bottom. I'll work my way up, so just bear with me. I currently have a pension. Will Nork buy out my pension? I was told most municipalities will. So pension questions, a little bit unique. Most of the time, what'll happen is if you are in another police and fire title, let's just say you're in corrections or sheriff and you get hired by the Nork Police Department, that is somebody who's already part of the police and fire retirement system, or if you're in Nork Fire and you go to Nork Police, those are easier changes as far as the pension. Your other pension time, public and PERS, public employment retirement system, even teachers, there's other pension credits that can be rolled over. The biggest thing is break in service. So if you do have a gap in service from when you paid into the pension, if you withdrew money, there are specific rules. For that, you should go on the New Jersey Pension Division of Pensions and Benefits website. They have a list of frequently asked questions there, but generally speaking, the answer is yes. Got another question, and I saw this higher up in the chat as well, asking, says, I see Corny says City of Nork too, so I can live in Nork and still get hired in Corny. The short answer to that is yes. So every town, like I mentioned before, has has residency preference depending on that specific jurisdiction and what they have selected. So if they've selected to be open to residents of their town and other towns, or some towns start off at a countywide list as their first initial preference, then that's what it is. So I'm just double checking. Kearney is yes. Number one is Town of Kearney and City of Nork. So residents of the City of Nork for Kearney are considered the same, their first preference. So when those results come out, everybody who is a resident of Kearney and a resident of Nork will be in that first batch, that first list of eligible candidates. Then it will go to Hudson and Essex counties. That's a good question there. Is there a limit to the amount of towns to apply in order to take the exams for law enforcement? The answer is no. You could apply for one, or you could apply for every single one that's listed. The biggest thing is they're $35 a piece, and some towns might require municipal residency as number one preference, county residency outside the county you live is number two before they go to a statewide list. So you are reducing your chances. So it's not a guarantee, but if it's something you're interested in, you can definitely fill out an application. They do not have a limit on their website. So that is a good question as well. There's a question here about federal pensions. So again, any pension specific related questions, anybody should look at the Division of Pension and Benefits website. Civil service will allow you to sign up for the exam, whether you have current pension credit, whether you do not have current pension credit, whether you're above the maximum hiring age, whether you're below the maximum hiring age. So that's something for everybody to understand, just like residency preference. The application process and the screening that's done by civil service is not to determine if you meet the residency requirements or if you have pension time, no pension time, you've met the age, you're too old. That's all something you have to read that frequently asked questions page. They have documents on veterans preference, the maximum hiring age, and again, the Division of Pension and Benefits website has all the frequently asked questions about use of pension time and merging that. Just looking for more questions. The maximum hiring age is typically 35 for municipal police jobs. That age and that number can be reduced under certain circumstances by other municipal police time service. Military service under certain circumstances, if you have active duty time, certain circumstances can reduce the maximum hiring age to make you eligible for the exam. I'm sorry, not to make you eligible for the exam, to make you eligible for the agency to hire you. Again, I just want to reiterate that if you are 50 years old and you want to sign up for this exam, the civil service website will allow you to do that. They will accept your payment. But if you do not have a way to reduce your age, in other words, you are not a municipal police officer in another town or something like that where you can reduce your hiring age, you will not be eligible for employment with that specific jurisdiction because you're over the maximum hiring age. There is a question on here, does Nork require residency by date of hire or by closing date? This is an interesting question and it's a good question. Civil service does not specifically list what each jurisdiction does. A lot of municipalities set ordinances or adopted resolutions years ago to determining the hiring date for residency or of the closing date of the exam. That is something you have to check with each individual appointing authority. It's actually mentioned on the Civil Service Frequently Asked Questions page. They don't maintain a database because the governing bodies set those again by ordinance or resolution. There's a question on here. I'd like to know when we could possibly receive our test results. Again, using their past time frame from the day they administer the exam, they have several Saturdays that they run different versions of the exam. Then the results are sent to an outside vendor, and then the lists come out. Typically, when they give the exam in the fall, the results come out in the March to April timeframe. So if they do administer it in the spring, in the May to June timeframe, it is likely that the results will come out sometime in September or October. Again, sticking with their normal timeframe. Could be sooner, could be later. They give you an estimate of the time, usually when the exam is administered, but they tell you that that is subject to change. There's another question on here that asks, is there a central website to review each department specification? So this is kind of a twofold question. That one link in the chat will list all of the agencies and departments that you can register and complete an application for right now. So when you take the exam, again, you're only going to take one exam. Your name will be on multiple lists if you fill out multiple applications. So that is the central website, so to speak, where you will see their residency preference and the agencies that are accepting applications from this particular exam. However, to see each individual town's residency preference ordinance or resolution, that has to be done on a town by town basis. And the only way to get that information would be to reach out to that specific appointing authority. The question here, if I live in Mercer County and have applied for Middlesex sheriffs, would I have to move? Does that apply to all departments? I search their websites and don't see the info. All right, so again, all that information is in that link on the chat. So if you click on that first link that I posted, it brings you to all the jobs. Up top, you can sort alphabetically. So that's what I just did. I went down to Sheriff's Officer in Middlesex County, and it's saying number 1, Middlesex County residents. Number 2, Mercer, Monmouth, Somerset, and Union County residents. And then number 3, open to residents of the state of New Jersey. So you say you live near Middlesex County. I'm assuming that's near but not inside Middlesex County. If it is in Mercer, Monmouth, Somerset, or Union, then the answer is you would get on the list after they have gone through all of the Middlesex County residents first. It's a question here. Do you suggest we apply for more than one application, even if we live in that town? That's a good question, and that's up to each individual person. You are going to have more opportunity for employment in law enforcement if you fill out more than one application. Again, if you go through the different residency requirements, one example, if you're a resident of Nork, I would apply for the Nork Police Department because they have preference for Nork residents. Kearney Police Department has preference for Kearney Police Department. Essex County Sheriff's Office, because you're living in the county of Essex, they have Essex County residents as first preference. And same thing with Essex County Corrections. So just by filling out that application for those 4 jurisdictions, you take one test, you're going to be on 4 different lists. So if you want the maximum exposure or maximum potential, then yes, I would fill out more than one application. If there is no way you want any other job in law enforcement besides one specific department, such as the Nork Police Department, the Kearney Police Department, Jersey City, Middlesex County, whatever it may be, then just fill out that one application. There would be no benefit to spending the extra money and filling out the extra applications if you're not interested in employment in those other locations. All right, so I think I got all of them going up. Let me just, now I'm back towards the bottom. All right, so there's the next question. Now I'm caught up, so I'm going to continue down from here. Is your test score the only thing departments take into consideration when reviewing, selecting individuals from the list of applicants? And the answer is no. That just gets you on the list. Once the town that is reviewing the list, they have the ability and requirement to have you complete an application, drug screening, background check, credit check. So there's a lot that goes into it more than just the score. The score is basically, and this is the short way to say this, gets you in the door to be eligible to pick up an actual employment application when they are hiring. Doesn't guarantee you a spot or give you the right to be selected. Just gives you a shot to pick up an application and put you in an order. So if they're only hiring 10 people and they certify a list, everybody who took the test for Nork Police is not going to have an opportunity to get an application, just the highest ranked people. So they're hiring 10, they might certify 100 people. They'll call in 100 people. 100 people get an opportunity to pick up an application. That was another good question. The age limit question, I think we already hit this. You could be 110 or 10 years old. You could fill out the application on their website, pay the $35. Where the age becomes a problem is during the actual hiring process. If they cannot enroll you in the pension system, they cannot hire you. So if you're 36, but you had a couple years of active duty military service, or you were a municipal police officer in another town, you could reduce that 35 hiring age by that number of years and be eligible for hire because you're eligible to be enrolled in the pension. So that's where it stands on hiring and as far as the application and the age limit. Another question here, is there such thing as preparing too early for the exam or waiting or wanting a career in law enforcement? I don't think there's anything wrong with preparing early or wanting a career in law enforcement early. Personally, I had just turned 19 when I started. So I think it's all a matter of personal preference, maturity level of the individual candidates. That's all going to get worked out in the screening process as well. If you are in college now and you think, well, it's a good time, let me finish college. When I'm a little bit older, this is something I would want to do. I would say fill out the application now and take the exam now, because by the time the results come out, and then by the time they certify off those lists, it could be more than a year, 2 years from now, and depending if there are veterans in front of you and how well other people did on the exam, the lists are typically good for 2, sometimes 3 years. By the time these results come out, which were issued the exam was in 2019, by the time these results come out, the current list may have been around for more than 3 years. So you have to say to yourself, not just now, would you want the job 3 years from now, 2 years from now, because it could be a while. You can also do what they call defer it. You can get certified by a town, start going through the process, and maybe you have 6 months or a year left of college and you want to finish that off before you start your career. You can call the department after you get the application, fill out some paperwork, and you defer the appointment, which doesn't put you off the list. It basically pauses your spot on the list for you. And the next time they hire, you would basically have that same ranking on the next go around. Next question, do you suggest we apply for more than one application? So this is similar to the question we saw before. Again, my answer is yes. If you would be willing to take employment as a law enforcement officer or police officer in more than one location, it's going to give you the maximum exposure and the most ability to get hired. How many years do you have to be in a department to transfer to another? There is no specific set time frame. There's a lot of rules and statutes that govern intergovernment transfers. There's also the ability for towns to hire certified police officers outside of the civil service process. And there's also, if you're a police officer, sheriff's officer, whatever the case may be, and you take the entry-level test again, you can get hired off their list just like anybody who's taking the exam now, and you would be in the same pool on the same list based on your ranking and your veteran status. So there is no specific time frame. And I'm not going to get into all the particulars of this, but what can happen is departments can require the department that has just spent money on the police academy to reimburse the other department for those expenses. So that is something where it's factored in and gets worked out between the agencies. What is the cutoff age that would disqualify from joining? Again, for municipal police, it's typically 35 years old. Right below that, it says, what about sheriff's departments? Sheriff's departments and corrections, the way the law is right now, you can either be in the police and fire pension system or the public employees system. So that is where the maximum hiring age comes in a lot of times on the municipal police titles. Since some of the job titles allow you to be in either pension system, your age would dictate that. If you're under the maximum hiring age, you would be in the police and fire pension system by default. If you're above that maximum hiring age, you still may be eligible for employment depending on the rules of the pension. So each person's specific situation with respect to past employment, or they already enrolled in the pension, and what specific job title they're going into would dictate that. What are some of the things people get disqualified for during the hiring process? So just some basic right off the cuff stuff, not responding to the certifications when they get them in the mail. That's probably number one. People will get a certification in the mail saying that they have 5 days to respond if they're interested in employment or being an applicant in whatever jurisdiction. If you do not respond and do not send them a letter and the agency does not receive it, they can remove you from the list. So that's probably the easiest way. And the biggest mistake that people make is they get the mail, they sit on it, it sits there for a couple days and they don't act quick enough. So that turnaround time frame is critical. Again, just like checking your junk mail and your spam, you should be checking the mail that comes to your address on a regular basis. Once you've taken the exam for that card, I would look for it on a regular basis because the window to return it is pretty short. Some of the other things that seem like common sense, but people will get disqualified for in the hiring process, not having their paperwork in order. So their license says 123 Main Street, City of Newark, but they really moved to 321 Main Street and never got around to changing their address. And their application says one address and their driver's license says something else. Essentially, they chalk it up to you're putting an inaccurate application in, not having a complete and thorough listing of your past work history or educational experience. So simple stuff like the high school you went to, maybe seasonal employment, full-time or part-time employment that you've had, any other background related information that you put on the application that is deemed not to be accurate is a very common way that people are screened out. I would, at this particular time, after you apply for the exam, but while you're waiting for the exam to be administered, this is a very easy thing you can do, is kind of make a list of every address you've ever lived at, every place you've ever worked at, every school you've ever attended, because every police, sheriff's, and law enforcement application is slightly different. Some of them will ask you, list every school you've attended. Some say list every school you've attended in the last 10 years. Some will ask for every job you've ever had. Some will ask for every job you've had in the last 10 years. So since each department is allowed to have their own specific application and the details in that application can vary, our recommendation is that you compile all this information now and not scramble for it, because usually once you get certified and you send that letter in, the turnaround time to pick up the application and start the process is pretty quick. Another way people get screened out is they fail the drug test. Usually when you are called to come pick your application up, from that point forward, you are eligible and have to submit to a drug test as a condition of employment. So if you come to pick up your application and they say, while you're here, you're going to submit to a drug test, and you say to yourself, well, I'm in a hurry, I can't stay for my drug test. Guess what? That's considered a refusal. They'll give you basically a form saying this. Once you say no, you're off the list. And that refusal gets reported to a registry, and then you're banned from other lists. So that is another common issue where, for one reason or another, sometimes people, they have time constraints. Once you become an applicant, that is a condition of employment and you are subject to a drug test, and a refusal is going to work against you. It's just like coming up positive. It's not going to work in your favor. Another question on here about the sheriff's department and the age limit. We already answered that. My last civil service exam test score is good until this May. If I retake the exam before that, disqualify me from Essex, being that I am not a resident at this current moment till the end of the month. So this is a unique situation, and I explained this briefly before with residency. If you're on the current list, first and foremost, the list is going to be in effect until the expiration date, or what's most likely going to happen is civil service is going to extend those lists until the new lists are issued. Okay, so that's what they've done with a lot of other entry-level exams and promotional exams. They've extended it because of COVID until the new list is issued. With that being said, as far as the residency and your changing of residency, you would be potentially, depending on where you live and where you've established residency, in a situation where if you need Essex County residency for the place that certifies you, and that's where you took the exam, but you no longer live there, you may end up removing yourself from the list unless it's a jurisdiction that requires you to establish residency by the date you're hired. Then you basically have an opportunity to move back and establish residency, but you would only know that if you speak to the specific jurisdiction that certifies you. So I don't have like a one-size-fits-all answer there. It's going to be dependent on each individual jurisdiction. When I apply, I have to apply to the certain position I want. Yes, that is correct. Each position and each jurisdiction. So if you fill out one application for the County of Essex, it doesn't automatically include every single jurisdiction in Essex County. You want to be Essex County Sheriff's Office on their list, specific application. You want to be on Essex County Corrections list, specific application. You want to be on Nork's list in Essex County, specific application. So each application, each jurisdiction is a separate application. If you want to apply for 10 different agencies and 10 different job titles, it's going to cost you $350. Another thing to keep in mind is they have specific announcements for bilingual officers. So if you are bilingual, you can sign up and take the police officer bilingual Spanish exam, police officer bilingual Korean exam, right? So there's different bilingual titles. That's in addition to the regular police title for that agency. And it's drawn off a separate list. So if they say, we want to hire bilingual officers, they don't pull off the regular list, they pull off the bilingual list. So there's a separate portion of the exam that will test your proficiency in the language that you select for the bilingual exam, in addition to the regular exam that you take. So don't just think if you speak a little bit of Spanish, you should check off the bilingual box, because you may not automatically pass the bilingual box because you speak a little bit of Spanish, right? You'd have to be proficient in it. And that is in addition to the regular entrance exam. There's an additional portion on there for the bilingual titles, but it's usually a much smaller pool of candidates, which means you have a higher likelihood of being certified off that list. So if that's something you fit into and you think that you can pass the bilingual exam, you're proficient in one of the languages that they have listed for a bilingual title, take that exam. However, you're going to have to fill out 2 applications. So if you take police officer Nork exam, $35. Police officer Nork bilingual, another $35, 2 separate applications. Next question, how does the process typically work after taking the test? What happens when your test results are posted, chosen, interviewed, academy, and time frame? I'm going to give you a condensed version of this. You take the exam tentatively in the spring of 2022. Expect your results tentatively in the fall of 2022. Exam scores would then be available to the municipalities to select from that eligible list. So they would reach out to civil service. They would ask for a list. If your name is ranked high enough, the example I gave before, I'll use it again. If they're hiring 10, they may certify a list of 100 people. So that town will be provided with a list of 100 candidates. Those people will be called in to pick up their applications, drug screening, application process, interview. A background check is part of that, which a lot of times includes providing a credit history, credit report. Then once all the screening's done, they will do a medical screening process, and they will also do a psychological exam as part of the entrance process. Once all that's done, then the agency will offer you employment and hire you. After that is done, you go to the police academy. Prior to going to the police academy, they have a basic physical fitness test, a baseline test that has to be completed. On the Police Training Commission's website, the New Jersey PTC, they have a sample video of what's required for that particular baseline to get into the police academy. And then you have the police academy, which is typically around 21, 22 weeks. depending on a couple different factors. Some of them are as long as 24 or 26 weeks. All depends on what academy you get sent to, but there is a minimum standard that the academy, as far as the length of time is concerned, for the Class A police academy, which would include police, sheriffs, county police titles, campus police titles, would all go to the police academy, the Class A class. Corrections at the state corrections level, they have a separate academy in Seagirt. Their academy, again, there's minimum standards, a little bit different time frame, and same with county corrections. They go to the county police academies throughout the state, slightly different curriculum and slightly different time frame. Nonetheless, all of these titles have to go to the police academy. Next question, I will be 35 years old in July. Is it possible for me to still get in? Again, your specific situation is going to determine that. If you have veterans preference, if you have other time in the pension, what specific job title you're seeking, that's all going to determine that. Do new hires have to be fully vaccinated? That all depends on the specific jurisdiction and the rules that they have promulgated for their law enforcement officers. Next question, I hold the state commission for railroad police, 2 years break in service due to a major layoff. I'm pushing 45 years, 10-year times, Nork special. So as far as this is a pretty long and specific question here that's posted by Raphael, you're gonna have to look at the rules a little bit more carefully. I would look at on that frequently asked questions page, there's a maximum hiring frequently asked questions document that civil service has posted there. I would take a look at that, and based on your specific situation, because that's what it's going to come down to, is the time and title. Can you reduce that maximum age and being eligible to be in the pension? Generally speaking, if you do not have enough time to reduce your age to that maximum hiring age of 35, which is required for the police and fire pension system, then you could potentially be eligible for one of the jobs in law enforcement that allows you to enroll in the PERS, Public Employee Retirement System. Next question, so if you're 34 and applying, when they get to you and you're over 35, will that be a problem? It's at the time of appointment, so it depends how quick the process goes, and again, it depends what, if anything, you can use to reduce your maximum age and the job title. So some job titles, like I just explained a couple times, you can go into the PERS system as opposed to PFRS. Then the age would not be the same factor. But if you're looking to a specific municipal police department, you're going to have to reduce your age by military service under the appropriate military service and the guidelines that they have set forth, or other municipal or specifically eligible law enforcement experience. Next question, if I am 36, can I still apply for a police department? Same as the answer, we keep going over this, so you have to review the maximum hiring age document, and it's all going to depend on your specific situation. Question on here, do I need to change my driver's license before the closing date? Our advice, if you are serious about this, play it safe and have all of your residency established prior to the closing date. This way, if it's an agency that requires it prior to the closing date or as of the closing date of the exam, you're good to go. If you have time to reach out to the individual agencies ahead of time, they may not have the answer. You may have to have them get back to you or talk to a municipal clerk in a town or somebody who can get that information on the ordinance or resolutions that were adopted by the town. Another age-related question here. Again, you got to review that maximum hiring age document on that frequently asked questions page. We answered the vaccination question. What if I have no experience in law enforcement or military? Not a problem. Take the entrance exam and be considered for entry-level law enforcement employment in New Jersey. You do not need current military or law enforcement experience. All right, in the Q&A box, we got a couple in here. Let me see if any of them are the same. All right, so all the questions in the Q&A, we've answered them live. Okay, so those questions have been answered about the bilingual exam. Answered the question about Carney, the age. We hit everything in the chat. So if anybody has, okay, you want the frequently asked questions link, no problem. Put that on there again. Yes, I'm just I reposted the frequently asked questions link. I'm reposting now the list of municipalities. You have a direct question? Gotcha. No. You say any more? So I don't see any new questions coming in. Oh, wait, there is one. What are the medical disqualification? Is it the same as the military? So typically, beyond drug screening, they do an EKG, a cardiologist will, or physician's assistants through a cardiologist will do a stress test. They'll do a basic physical, blood work, things of that nature. So it is basically an intense physical that you will be required to pass as part of the medical screening. And thank you for the opportunity.
Right, I want to thank everyone for joining today's seminar. I especially want to thank our friend Captain Esposito. I think he did an outstanding job of answering, a lot of your questions, of sharing very important information regarding residency. I think we all agree that this year's examination is very different from examinations in previous years. And the details that Captain Esposito shared with us, I think are going to be very valuable as you go ahead and register for this exam and decide which municipalities or departments across the state you're interested in applying for. We did record today's session and we'll be in a position to repost it on our social media site. So if you want to go back and reference any of the materials that were covered in today's session, you'll be able to do so. And moving forward after the deadline for this exam, we will be hosting in collaboration with the Hispanic law enforcement some additional sessions to help you prepare for the exam. I would encourage everyone to take it upon yourselves to identify as many resources as possible in order for you to prepare for this examination. We will host maybe a session or two just to provide some overview and help you along the way. But there are a number of other resources that are available to you, and we would encourage you to identify and take advantage of those. And on behalf of my office, I wish everyone who participated in this session a lot of luck as you go through this process. I speak selfishly from the city of Nork and our police division. We definitely need good people to join our department There's incredible things that are going on in our city, and our police division plays a great role in making sure that our city grows, and more importantly, that the residents of our community get the services that they need. And I'm gonna ask George Torres from the Hispanic Law to see if he has any words that he wants to share before we close out today's seminar.
Thank you, Councilman. I'd like to thank you first and foremost for putting this together. I'd like to thank Captain Esposito for breaking it down as clearly as it could possibly can be. But I also would like to remind everybody participating, not only does taking the test and preparing for the test important, but please do not slack on the physical part. It's not too late to start running or jogging. It's not too late to start, doing exercise. All right, thank you again.